Welcome everyone to Raw Dog Game Reviews. I'm the Raw Dog, and this is what we do here at Raw Dog Game Reviews. I'm going to review a game I recently played. But here's the catch. There's no script and no editing. I'm just going to ramble on my review for the game, off the top of my head, off the cuff if you will. Now that that's out of the way, let's get to it, and let's go in Raw Dog. Okay, this time we're talking about Wo Long, the Fallen Dynasty. And, well, I definitely love this game. I'm a big person on the Souls franchise, and I love the Souls franchise. And a lot of games that go along with it. I've played a bunch of Souls-likes as well, although I haven't played all of them, I wouldn't say that. But I've played a bunch here and there. But I mostly stick to the more contemporary, more serious Souls games. So, I'm also big on the Koei Tecmo side. Played a lot of the Warriors games, played a lot of Team Ninja games, played a lot of Ninja Gaiden back in the day. So definitely super into the Nioh franchise, which I'm also going to talk about slightly here in this episode to go along with Wo Long because they're kind of similar and all that. Well, they're not just similar, they're basically the same game. But anyway, to keep going, yes, Wo Long. Big supporter of the whole Souls series and big supporter of the Nioh series. So I love this game. I really enjoyed Wo Long. Definitely a good game. Definitely one of my favorites. Although not my favorite, but one of my favorites. So, to start off, I'll say that, like I said, I'm a big supporter of the Nioh franchise. And I actually like Nioh better than the Souls games. It's my opinion. I'm allowed to have it. Here, see, some of you will say, but I'm allowed to have that, my opinion. So, I like the way that Nioh does things better than the Souls series. Because I like how Nioh also gives you a lot of different skills you can use, and a lot of different techniques, and a lot of different magic powers. And all in all, it's just more flashy. It's like if Ninja Gaiden was made into a Souls game, which, is basically already what it is. The Ninja Gaiden series, for the ones of you that don't know, were very difficult, well, maybe not very, but they were difficult, flashy ninja games that were awesome, and I loved them. And when the Souls came out, they were obviously very good as well. I love the Demon Souls, I love Dark Souls, I love all these games. But anyway, so yeah, when I saw Nioh, I started playing Nioh for the first time, I was like, yeah, this feels like Ninja Gaiden, but it also feels like Souls. So it feels like how if Ninja Gaiden came together with Souls and, had an awesome little baby. And yeah, that's what I think. So I think it's gone the right evolution. And to me, is the better of the Souls games. So I actually, like I said, straight up prefer Nioh to the Souls series themselves. Because I like the flashier elements. Don't get me wrong, I love Souls. But when you get down to it, Souls is just blocking and or dodging and waiting for your opening to attack. And, attacking and then repeating this process. Whereas Nioh, you get to do a lot of flashy techniques and get to go in with a lot of cool magic. Now, there is definite magic in the Soul series, but I mean, I don't know, unless you really specialize in being a mage, you don't really get to do too much of it. But as Nioh works it, you can still use magic even if you're not specializing in mage. So anyway, my point is, I like the way that Nioh does it better, where you can still do a lot of flashy, cool anime things while still having an awesome Souls game to play. So, I like it. And I love Nioh 1. I like Nioh 1 better than Nioh 2 because I like games to have a storyline, which is one of my problems with Wo Long. But anyway, we'll get to that. So, I have to say that, I like Wo Long. And now to actually get to the game itself. Instead of talking in the preamble about this kind of stuff. So yeah, like I said, I like Wo Long. The graphics are perfect, so we'll go into graphics first, like I always do. Like I said, the graphics are perfect. They're good graphics. They're standard graphics for a Souls game. They look really good. They don't look ridiculously over realistic, or they don't look, really cartoonish or anything. They look like a good Souls game. The graphics looks good, standard, the people look good, the hair looks good, the armor looks great, the weapons look great. The detail on the weapons and the armor is exactly what you want it to be, and that's what it needs to be. The level design is really good. I find the level design good, even though I think others say that's where Nioh is lacking. I think the level design works very well for what it is. And I kind of like the idea of a level-based system rather than an open world system. Although I do love Elden Ring, so I can't say that I don't like the idea of the open world scenario. But I also just like the idea of mission based, where you can kind of select where you want to go and know where you're have basically a map and know kind of have at least a direction of where you're going, and having a way to kind of segment your time. Whereas in Elden Ring, you kind of just set off and you lose hours and hours and hours to that game, which is awesome. But when you're on a time limit and you're thinking like, well, what can I fit in this 2 hour slot I have before I have to get back to work or something, then it's more it's harder to judge what you want to do, what kind of dungeon you want to tackle or something. Whereas mission-based system, you can say like, well, this mission will probably take me like an hour, so I can do this mission. You know what I mean? So anyway, to get back, yeah, the graphics look good, definitely good. I wouldn't say they're amazingly stunning or anything, but I wouldn't say it needs to be a graphically amazing game. It's not going for that. But then again, the graphics are really good in Wolong. They look great. The characters look really on point. I mean, going back from the days of Dynasty Warriors originals, where these characters look kind of silly. Nah, these games look on point. Wolong looks great. Cao Cao looks like himself. Guan Yu looks like him. The characters just look good. So yeah, it just looks good. The game is definitely stunning in the graphics, in my opinion. And yeah, like I said, the level designs look good. The levels themselves look really good. And yeah, I think they are a very good representation of the ancient China and all that stuff. I think it's a really good graphical game. And now for the story. Well, the story is not that different than the stories you're used to hearing at this point. If you've been playing Dynasty Warriors games and games like that, and also games like Neo, where it's basically a retelling of history with some obviously fiction and flair, because obviously there weren't giant demons and elixirs and all this craziness happening in the real history. But they can't just do history for a game. History for a game wouldn't entirely be one-to-one interesting. We want a game, we don't want history, at least it's for me. So I like the idea of adding some fiction and flair to it, which is why I love Neo. It's got that history, so you get to see a lot of historical characters and maybe not learn, but have some history background in there. But obviously, you get to have some awesome fun with some fiction, because that's where it is. But anyway, yeah, Wolong definitely has that. But my problem comes in with the story, with the fact that you are a nameless soldier that just kind of pops out of nowhere and also doesn't talk and doesn't really have anything to do. I don't like that in games. I've never liked that in games. That's my only problem with the Souls games. Well, also I don't like how the Souls games are very vague. I'm not really one to enjoy the whole finding story through finding random items and looking at their backstory for hours and trying to find some semblance of a story like that. I don't like that. But anyway, to get back to the point, I like games to have an actual storyline that it follows, an actual plot line. Give me a second. Okay, so yeah. Sorry, just taking a drink. And yeah, I like the games to actually follow a plot line. And yeah, it's just... that doesn't really happen very well with games like Wolong. It does follow a plot, of course, but it follows a very generalized plot. You're kind of taking a backseat to the greater plot of the world rather than a plot of the character or a character. Which is why I like Neo. Neo 1 is my preferred out of the trilogy, if you want to call it a trilogy, of these games. And yeah, it's because it has a plot, because you're playing as William, and you are William. And he has a voice, he is a character, and you follow his plot. And it's interesting. I like that. I like following a plot. I like following an interesting plot line. And the same thing happens with Neo 2, where you're just now a nameless soldier and you're just making your base character. And that's why I don't like it. Like I said, then the Souls games do this, where you just, yeah, it's cool that you get to make your own character and customize them as you wish, but you can do that with William too. You can customize him pretty much as you want. Give him all the clothes you want, give him all the weapons you want. He's not pure William, he's your William. And I would prefer that for all of these kind of games. If they just give you a character that was relatively nameless, but you could, do what you wanted to do with them and make them male or female or whatever, and but give them an actual place in the story, give them an actual purpose, that they had a voice, that they did things, and there was a plot to actually follow rather than just going along with the greater world plot. That would be great. But anyway, obviously that's not the case. So yeah, like I said, the story is good. It's basic. It's just the War of the Three Kingdoms, and you're following along in it, and you're just following along with the characters and doing some awesome, cool fights. And that's the entire plot line. And that is what it is. So yeah, that's more of what it is. It's cool to see you interacting with all these cool characters like Guan Yu and Cao Cao and Liu Bei. I'm probably pronouncing them terribly. I try. My Chinese is not good. Anyway, yeah, these characters, you get to interact with them, and it's really cool. Although I'd much rather prefer being an actual character in the storyline. But anyway, I say the coolest moments are when you pop out of nowhere and do something cool and get to interact with the characters. But you don't really get to interact with them very well because you are just that nameless soldier. You're soldier number one. It doesn't matter. You basically don't matter to the plotline. The plotline would go along without you anyway. And that's why I don't like that in the plots. But yeah, like I said, the plot is good. I just finished up with the DLC, obviously, too. So the plot of the DLC is also good. It follows along with histories, and it goes right along, and it's a good structured plot. It just does what it needs to do. It doesn't tell you anything you don't already know if you've looked into the Three Kingdoms histories and the Three Kingdoms story or book, novel, whatever you want to say, and all those things. So it doesn't really tell you anything. Well, obviously the fiction part of it, but yeah, you know what I mean. It does a good job of telling its story, the story that is already there. But anyway, it's good. I like the plot. It's a fun plot. You get to put yourself in the history and follow along and do a lot of cool things, interact with a lot of cool characters, and that's that. Now, the gameplay. I really like the gameplay, too. The gameplay is really good. It's definitely a good gameplay. And I think it's a standout to the Neo series and things like that. I like the different weapons you get to use. I like the different things you get to do. And I like how the combat works. I will say this right now. I'm not going to gripe on it, but I do not like Sekiro. I hated Sekiro. I thought it was far too stupid that it relied heavily on parry system. The level up system from Souls games was basically non-existent. I don't like games that don't have progression. That's why I'm not a big fan of the Monster Hunter series. Just saying, I'm not going to go on a big splur of this, but yeah, I don't like games that don't have progression. Now, yeah, Monster Hunter has progression. I'm not going to start arguing with fans of Monster Hunter here, but the Monster Hunter progression is different. It's gear-based progression, and it's a lot based on loot and random drops. It's not the kind of progression I prefer. I prefer level-based progression, where you gain XP for doing a task, and you grow levels, and it goes to your stats. Simple, easy numbers. That's what I like. I like that. I like normal, standard level progression. So that's one of the reasons I like the Souls games, because they are RPGs in that sense, that you get XP, you level up, your attributes go up, you have standard level progression. And that is a way to conquer the levels. You can, in a sense, brute force a lot of bosses. Whereas, yes, you want to learn their attack patterns and such things like that, but you also, by leveling up, can become stronger and become better at the bosses in that way too. You take less damage because you have more HP, or you have better toughness. You do more damage because you have better weapons and better attacks, and you just have better damage stats. All those things work together to make you a stronger character. And of course, the best part about it is when you go into an old area that was like level 1 area, you get to go back being this, level 200 monster and show these guys, how strong you are now. You get to push their faces into the floor and say, hey, who's doing a bad job now, huh? I get to kick your butt now. You don't kick my butt anymore. I one-shot you. You don't one-shot me anymore. And I just didn't like how Sekiro basically didn't do that. You basically don't level up in Sekiro. Your stats basically never change. You never change any weapons. You get to change this like sub-weapon, but it doesn't really matter that much. It doesn't really change the gameplay all that much. You're always using the same weapon, always having basically the same stats. The game basically doesn't change. You are basically just forced to learn to parry everything. And also, I think you're basically just forced to run from everything, because if you're going to try to parry every single enemy that comes at you throughout the entire game and explore in a diligent, slow manner, like how you handle the rest of the Souls series or the Neo series, where you kind of, or at least how I do it, you kill every enemy that comes in your path so you can explore the area fully and, without enemies, so you can find all the things and, become stronger. The game doesn't really want you to do that, because if you try to parry every enemy, you basically get one-shotted if you make a mistake. And to learn every single pattern from every enemy takes a long, long time that at least I don't have. I don't have the time. I don't have that kind of time. If you have that kind of time, then, congrats to you. And if you really love Sekiro, you're allowed to have your opinion, and I'm allowed to have mine. So whatever. Yeah, I don't like it. I don't think it's a good method. I would rather prefer the idea that I can take the enemy the way I want to take them, and I don't have to run from them, and they shouldn't be able that every single enemy in the game shouldn't be able to one-shot me. It just kind of seems dumb in my opinion, especially when you should be able to actually get progression, but there basically is no progression in Sekiro. The progression is basically just locked. Anyway, yeah, that's why I like Wolong, because Wolong does fix that. It is a game heavily based on parries, although I will say the parry actually feels a lot tighter. Because Sekiro had that problem that I feel a lot of games that focus on parrying do, where the parry doesn't actually happen when you hit the button. Your parry more or less goes off in like a stance. You hit the button for parry, and your character kind of like goes into a stance for it, and as they're going into that stance, they're still kind of open to attack. So you don't actually parry the instant you hit the button. You have to more or less, actually figure out the timing on it, whereas you have to hit the button for parry, and they have to get ready for the parry, and then the parry has to come in. It's kind of a weird thing to say, but yeah, basically what I'm saying is there's basically a lag between hitting the button and the parry actually going off. And whereas in Wolong, it doesn't feel like that lag is actually present almost at all. It feels like the moment you hit the parry button, the game basically just knows that you're trying to parry. So as long as you've hit the button and it hasn't gone away, you're going to parry. And that, again, fits that little role where I feel like it needs to be tight. If the game is going to rely on parries so heavily, it should be a very, very tight parry where you hit the button and it works. It doesn't just, have to go into a stance or anything. It just works. But anyway, the point of the matter is, I also like I said, the progression. Wolong is very parry-based, but it has that progression. So even though you have to rely on the parry, you also can just progress. You can get stronger and come back when you're stronger and use those things to your advantage, so you're not just one-to-one relying on parry. And also, you can actually take flippin' hits. And Wolong, because of that progression factor, if you mess up on the parry once or twice, you're not just dead. That was my problem with Sekiro, was that it was so heavily based on parries, and because there was no progression, when you took a hit, because you're going to mess up at some point, when you took a hit, you basically just died. There was no real coming back from a hit, because the enemies basically all one-shotted you. So if you made a mistake, you just got one-shotted and it's over, which that bothered me. Whereas Wolong fixes that, because the progression actually exists. So if you do mess up and miss a parry, you're not just one-shotted. You actually still have a chance in the fight. And that feels good. You should still have a chance. Being one-shotted is kind of dumb, constantly at least. Especially when it's just random enemies, not bosses. But anyway, I digress to go back. Yeah, it's good to know that you have the chance. So yeah, like I said, I really like how Wolong does its parry system. You can see the enemies winding up. They have the big attacks that you need to parry. Well, maybe not need, but that makes the battle, makes them go into this big stagger moment and everything, and that just feels good. The game has a lot of stagger in it too. When you hit a lot of lower enemies, they actually react to you and they stagger, especially the human enemies. That's one of the things I love about Neo and Wolong, is that when you fight human enemies, or at least human-esque enemies, they stagger so much. Human bosses are basically like a joke, because they basically just get staggered all the time. You get a nice combo running, and you just make them eat dirt. Just make them eat dirt, because they cannot keep up with your combo. They just get staggered all over the place. But anyway, yeah, I like how the game functions with that. And also, I think the game functions really well when you have a lot of the buffs. The buffs work really nicely. I usually use the buff where all of your attacks do give you healing as well, and I usually stack that with the buff that gives you some super armor and better defense, so that I can tank hits as well as getting HP back when I do damage. And if I can, I also try to pair that with doing more damage, the buff that gives you and your allies more damage, whether I have an ally or not. And anyway, to go along with all that, it's really nice. I usually use dual swords and or Kestis. I think it's pronounced Kestis. I hope it's not Cestus, but either way. Anyway, yeah, I usually try to use those weapons. And yeah, I really say that the gameplay is beautiful. I love how the countering works. I love how you get to do these awesome vicious attacks on enemies that are staggered because you countered them perfectly. I think that works really well, and it has a really nice element to the countering because you're not just countering, you get to do these awesome vicious attacks that look really anime and flashy, and they're just really cool. I like how the different weapons have different looks for the attacks. It just has a nice, really good feel to it. I like being able to summon the deities and all those things. I like that. That adds more flair to the game, adds more power to yourself as a character. And even for Wolong, it doesn't actually do that much. When you summon the deities, they give you a bit of a boost in damage with the element, and they get to add element to your weapons. But they don't actually do that much. Like in Neo, it's a lot more effective. So I'll say Wolong definitely has that challenge because it doesn't make it all that effective, actually. But anyway, yeah, I like that. And I think the gameplay is just stand out good. I think this is what the gameplay of this kind of game should be. If you want to make a parry-based Souls game that has a lot of parrying to it, like I've heard Lies of P is really good. I need to get into Lies of P, but I'm waiting for it to go on sale. And like I've heard Lies of P is really, really good, and I think that Lies of P will also solve the problems I have with Sekiro, where it is heavily parry-based, but it has that progression system. Because as long as you have that progression system, basically the game can always feel good because you're always able to make yourself better. You're able to make yourself better with gear and weapons and levels, which is what it needs. Whereas when you're a static character and the game is just difficult, you can basically just never make yourself better. You just have to sit there and put tons of time into learning every single enemy's attack pattern because the minute you get hit, you die. I think that's dumb. Anyway, yeah, I really enjoyed Wolong. I thought it was great. I thought the loot system was great. Like I said with Strangers of Paradise, I think the loot system was very bad in that game. I think that the loot system that Neo and Wolong does is the perfect balance of it. It gives you a lot of loot, but you can also use your gear or weaponry for a long period of time. I basically stick to my setup in the game forever. I basically didn't change. I had the Mana Benevolence armor from Liu Bei because I used dual swords. I used that pretty much throughout the entire game. I had it +9. And I had his swords because I gained his favor and he became a sworn brother. So, yeah, I used his equipment throughout pretty much the entire game. I basically didn't change once I unlocked that equipment. And that's what I mean. Yeah, you get a lot of loot drops, but you don't have to constantly be changing. Your gear can take you through the entire game. I think that's just what the game should be. But anyway, yeah. So, I think the gameplay for Wolong is the peak of what Sekiro wanted to be or what it should have been. And I think that this is the natural evolution for things. I would have preferred if that you actually got to adjust your attributes like you do in Neo in more standard Souls games, rather than adjusting your elements. But I liked how the elements were kind of like the attributes in different manners, and they work to upgrade different areas of your abilities. So I think the level system actually worked really well. I was a little skeptic about it at first when I first tried the demos and the betas for Wolong, but after toying with it for a while and then playing through the game all the way, yeah, I think the level system works really well. I used pretty much water and lightning, water and metal, I guess I should say, throughout the entire game. I was a water metal character, a little bit of earth and a little bit of fire on the side, and yeah, it was really good. I think the level system actually works really, really well. If you want to do it so it's not all one-to-one attributes, this is a good way to go, giving it areas that each attribute works for. It just makes it really a standout game. So yeah, I say if you're a fan of Souls games, if you're a fan of Ninja Gaiden, if you're a fan of Neo, if you're a fan of the Koei Tecmo feel of games, I guess it's not really that close to a Warriors game, but it's like a more challenging Warriors game. I love Warriors games. Anyway, or Musou series, whatever you want to call them. But yeah, so yes, I would say highly recommend it. Definitely go ahead and get it. It's a great game. Wolong is probably one of the best Souls-likes there is, if not the best. But I'd still prefer Neo first, the story base of the game. And like I said, the story is good for Wo Long. It's good, but it's just the basic Three Kingdoms story that you're just riding along with. You don't really affect much of it. And yeah, the game is great. So that's where I'll end this off on. Have a good time. Enjoy the game. Okay, well, that was my raw review. Thanks for listening, and if you liked it and want to hear more, you can like and subscribe. But I'll be back here regardless whether you like it or not, with more Raw Dog Gaming Reviews. See you next time. Bye-bye!